The morning sun
Oh
painted the sky
my
in shades of
God.
gold and pink. Inside the grand palace, Princess Elena stood by her window, watching the world wake up. Her long brown hair moved gently in the breeze. She touched the cold glass with her fingers and sighed deeply. Today was different. Today, everything would change. Elena was 25 years old. She had lived in this palace her whole life. The tall walls, the beautiful gardens, the golden gates, this was all she knew. But she had never felt truly happy here. Her heart wanted something else, something more. "Your Highness, it is time," said Margaret, her lady-in-waiting. The old woman had taken care of Elena since she was a baby. Margaret's eyes looked sad today. Elena turned around and smiled softly. "I know, Margaret. I am ready." But she was not ready. How could anyone be ready for this? 3 months ago, the king had made an announcement. Princess Elena would marry Prince Alexander from the neighboring kingdom. It was arranged. It was decided. Elena had no choice in the matter. This marriage would bring peace between two kingdoms that had fought for many years. Elena had never met Prince Alexander. She had only seen his picture once. He looked handsome in his royal uniform, with dark hair and serious eyes. But what did it matter? She did not love him. She did not even know him. The real pain in Elena's heart came from someone else. His name was Thomas. He was a royal guard who protected the palace. Thomas had worked at the palace for 3 years. He was brave, kind, and honest. He had bright blue eyes and a smile that made Elena's heart feel warm. They had met by accident 2 years ago. Elena was walking in the garden late at night, trying to escape from a difficult day. She found Thomas standing near the fountain, looking at the stars. They started talking. That night changed everything. After that, they would meet secretly in the garden whenever they could. They talked about everything, their dreams, their fears, their hopes. Thomas told her about his childhood in a small village. Elena told him about feeling trapped in her royal life. With Thomas, she could be herself, not a princess, just Elena. They fell in love, deep, true love, the kind of love that people write songs about. But their love was impossible. A princess could not marry a guard. The rules were clear. The tradition was strong. If anyone found out about their secret meetings, Thomas would lose his job. Or worse, so they kept their love hidden. They treasured every stolen moment together, every secret smile, every gentle touch when no one was watching. Now that was all ending. Elena walked slowly through the palace halls. Her long white dress made soft sounds on the marble floor. Today, she would meet Prince Alexander for the first time. He was arriving this morning with his family. In 1 week, they would be married. The throne room was filled with people. Nobles, advisors, servants, everyone wanted to see the prince arrive. Elena's father, King Edward, sat on his throne looking proud and strong. Her mother, Queen Charlotte, smiled at Elena, but her smile seemed forced. Elena took her place beside her parents. Her hands were shaking slightly. She tried to breathe calmly. The large doors opened with a loud sound. Prince Alexander entered the room. He walked with confidence. His royal uniform was perfect. His shoulders were straight. He looked exactly like his picture, handsome and serious. But when their eyes met, Elena felt nothing. No spark. No connection. Just emptiness. Alexander bowed to the king and queen. Then he turned to Elena and bowed again. "Princess Elena," he said. His voice was formal and cold. "It is an honor to meet you." "The honor is mine, Prince Alexander," Elena replied, keeping her voice steady. They shook hands. His hand was firm, but felt like ice. The king stood up and smiled widely. "Today marks a new beginning for our kingdoms. Let us celebrate this joyful union." Everyone clapped and cheered. Music began to play. People started talking and laughing. Elena wanted to run away. She wanted to scream. But she stood still smiling like a perfect princess. During the celebration, Prince Alexander barely spoke to her. He talked mostly with the king about politics and war strategies. When he did speak to Elena, his words were polite but distant. He asked basic questions like a stranger making conversation. "Do you enjoy music, princess?" "Yes, very much. That is good." And silence. Elena realized something terrible. Alexander did not want this marriage either. He was doing his duty, just like her. They were both prisoners of their crowns. As the celebration continued, Elena's eyes searched the room. And then she saw him, Thomas. He stood near the aisle with the other guards. His uniform was clean and perfect. His face showed no emotion. But when their eyes met, Elena saw everything in his gaze. Pain, love, heartbreak. Her chest tightened. Tears filled her eyes, but she forced them back. Thomas looked away first. He had to. Someone might notice. That small moment broke Elena's heart into 1,000 pieces. The celebration lasted for hours. Elena smiled and nodded. She danced with Prince Alexander. She accepted congratulations from nobles. She played her role perfectly. But inside, she was dying. When the celebration finally ended, Elena returned to her room. She closed the door and leaned against it. Then, finally, she let the tears fall. Margaret came in quietly and hugged her. "Oh, my dear child," she whispered. Elena cried on Margaret's shoulder like a little girl. "I cannot do this, Margaret. I cannot marry him. I do not love him." "I know," Margaret said softly. "I know. My heart belongs to someone else." Margaret pulled back and looked at Elena with knowing eyes. "The guard," she said quietly. Elena's eyes went wide. "You knew?" Margaret smiled sadly. "I have known for a long time, my dear. An old woman sees many things. What do I do?" Elena whispered. Margaret wiped Ina's tears gently. "You are a princess. You have a duty to your kingdom. But what about my heart?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears, too. "Sometimes, my precious girl, we must break our own hearts to save others." Elena looked out her window at the dark sky. Somewhere in the palace, Thomas was probably looking at the same stars. They were so close, yet so far apart. 1 week. That was all the time she had left. 1 week until she married a stranger. 1 week until she said goodbye to her true love forever.
The next 3 days passed like a slow, painful dream. Princess Elena tried to be the perfect bride. She attended dinners with Prince Alexander and his family. She smiled during dress fittings. She approved flowers and decorations for the wedding. But every night, she cried herself to sleep. Prince Alexander remained polite but distant. They would sit together at meals, but conversation felt like work. He talked about his kingdom, his horses, and his hunting trips. He never asked about her feelings or her dreams. He never tried to know the real Elena. On the 4th day, something changed. Elena was walking through the rose garden in the afternoon. She needed air. She needed space to breathe. The wedding was only 3 days away now, and the palace felt like a cage. She sat on a stone bench near the fountain. This was the same spot where she had first met Thomas 2 years ago. The memory made her heart ache. Princess Elena. She jumped at the voice. It was Prince Alexander. He stood a few feet away, looking uncomfortable. "Prince Alexander," she said, standing quickly. "I did not hear you approach." "May I sit?" he asked. "Of course." They sat together in awkward silence. Alexander looked at the fountain, his jaw tight. Finally he spoke. "I know you do not wish to marry me," he said quietly. Elena's heart stopped. I do not understand." Alexander turned to look at her. For the first time, his serious face showed real emotion. "Please, princess, do not pretend. I have eyes. I have seen your sadness. I have felt your distance." Elena did not know what to say. She looked down at her hands. "I want you to know something," Alexander continued. "I do not wish to marry you either." Elena looked up, shocked. "What?" Alexander stood, and walked to the fountain. I am in love with someone else, a lady from my kingdom. Her name is Isabella. She is the daughter of a merchant. We have loved each other since we were children. Elena's mouth opened slightly. But then why? Because I am a prince, Alexander said, his voice filled with pain. Because my father commanded it. Because duty comes before love. Because I have no choice. He turned to face her, just like you. For the first time, Elena saw Alexander as a real person, not just a stranger in a royal uniform. He was suffering too. I am sorry, Elena whispered. Do not be sorry for me, Alexander said. I am sorry for both of us. We are both prisoners. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Alexander spoke again. There is someone, is there not? Someone you love. Elena's heart raced. Should she tell him? Could she trust him? Yes, she finally admitted. There is someone. Tell me about him, Alexander said gently. And so Elena did. She told Alexander about Thomas, about their secret meetings in the garden, about how he made her laugh, about how he saw her as Elena, not as a princess. The words poured out like water from a broken dam. Alexander listened quietly. When she finished, he nodded slowly. He sounded like a good man. He is the best man I know, Elena said, tears filling her eyes. Alexander reached out and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Then we are both marrying the wrong person. Elena looked at him and saw tears in his eyes too. In that moment, something shifted between them. They were not enemies. They were allies. Two people trapped in the same cage. What do we do? Elena asked. Alexander shook his head. I do not know, but at least we understand each other now. Perhaps that will make this easier. It would not make it easier, but it helped to know she was not alone in her pain. That night, Elena could not sleep. She got out of bed and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. She walked quietly through the dark palace hallways. Her feet led her to the garden. She knew she should not go there. It was dangerous. But her heart needed to see Thomas one more time. The garden was silent and dark. The moon gave soft light to the flowers and trees. Elena walked to the fountain and waited. Minutes passed. Maybe he would not come. Maybe he was on duty somewhere else. Maybe... Elena! She turned quickly. Thomas stepped out from the shadows. He was not in his guard uniform. He wore simple clothes. His blue eyes looked sad and tired. Thomas, she breathed. They ran to each other. Thomas wrapped his arms around her tightly. Elena buried her face in his chest and finally felt safe. I should not be here, Thomas whispered. If anyone sees us... I do not care anymore, Elena said, looking up at him. I needed to see you. I needed to tell you. Do not say it, Thomas said, his voice breaking. Please, Elena, do not make this harder. But I love you, Elena said, tears streaming down her face. I love you with all my heart. I always will. Thomas closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. I love you too, more than my own life. But love is not enough. We could run away, Elena said desperately. We could leave tonight. We could go somewhere far away, where no one knows us. We could be free. Thomas cupped her face in his hands. And what about your kingdom? What about the peace this marriage will bring? What about the thousands of people who need this alliance? I do not care about any of that. Elena cried. Yes, you do, Thomas said gently. You care deeply. That is who you are. That is why I love you. You are good and kind and selfless. You could never run away and let your people suffer. It would destroy you. Elena knew he was right. She sobbed against his chest. I have something for you, Thomas said softly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden bird. It was carved beautifully, with tiny details in the feathers. I made this for you. I know you love birds. I know you wish to fly free. Elena took the small bird in her hands. It was the most precious thing she had ever received. Keep it, Thomas said, and remember that somewhere in this world there is a guard who loves a princess more than anything, who will love her until his last breath. Thomas. This is goodbye, Elena, Thomas whispered. After the night, We cannot see each other again. It is too painful. It is too dangerous." "No," Elena sobbed. "Please, no." Thomas kissed her forehead gently. Then he stepped back. "Be happy, Elena. Or at least try to find peace. You deserve that." "So, do you?" Elena whispered. Thomas smiled sadly. Then he turned and walked away into the darkness. Elena stood alone in the garden, holding the wooden bird, watching the only man she would ever love disappear from her life forever. The wedding was 2 days away. The morning of the day before the wedding, Elena woke up feeling numb. She had cried all her tears. Now, she felt empty inside, like a shell with nothing left. She got out of bed and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her face looked pale and tired. This was not how a happy bride should look. Margaret came in with breakfast, but Elena could not eat. The food tasted like sand in her mouth. "You must eat something, Your Highness," Margaret said with worry in her voice. "I cannot," Elena whispered. Margaret sat beside her and took her hand. "I know your heart is broken, my child, but you must be strong. Just one more day. One more day. Then she would belong to someone else forever." The palace was busy with final preparations. Servants ran everywhere, carrying flowers, food, and decorations. Musicians practiced their songs. Cooks prepared the wedding feast. Everyone was excited except Elena. She spent the morning in her room, away from all the noise and happiness. She held the small wooden bird Thomas had given her. She touched its tiny wings and remembered his face, his voice, his touch. A knock came at her door. "Come in," Elena said quietly. Prince Alexander entered. He looked serious as always, but his eyes were kind. "May we talk?" he asked. Elena nodded and gestured to a chair. Alexander sat down and was quiet for a moment. "I spoke with my father last night," he finally said. "I told him the truth. I told him about Isabella." Elena's eyes widened. "What did he say?" "He was very angry," Alexander said, his voice tight. "He said love is a luxury that princes cannot afford. He said duty is everything. He reminded me that this marriage will save lives and end a long war." "I am sorry," Elena said softly. Alexander looked at her with sad eyes. "Do you know what the worst part is? He is right. If I do not marry you, the war will continue. Soldiers will die. Villages will burn. Children will lose their fathers. All because I wanted to follow my heart." Elena felt a tear roll down her cheek. "We are trapped." "Yes," Alexander agreed. "But I have been thinking. Maybe we can make the best of this trap." "What do you mean?" Alexander leaned forward. "We do not love each other. We never will. But perhaps we can be friends. We can respect each other. We can be kind to each other. That is more than many royal couples have." Elena thought about his words. He was trying to find hope in a hopeless situation. "And who knows," Alexander continued, "maybe in time we will find a way to be happy. Not the happiness we dreamed of, but a different kind, a quiet kind." "Do you really believe that?" Elena asked. Alexander was quiet for a long time. "I want to believe it," he finally said, "because if I do not, I think I will go mad." Elena understood exactly what he meant. That afternoon, Elena was called to the throne room. Her father wanted to speak with her. She walked slowly through the palace halls, dreading what was coming. King Edward sat on his throne, looking powerful and stern. Queen Charlotte stood beside him, her face gentle but sad. "Elena," the king said, "tomorrow is your wedding day. Are you ready?" Elena wanted to scream no. She wanted to tell him everything, but she just nodded. "Yes, father." The king studied her face carefully. "You do not look happy." "I am nervous, father." The king stood and walked down to her. He placed his large hands on her shoulders. "I know this is difficult, my daughter, but you are doing something important, something brave. This marriage will bring peace to thousands of people. You are a hero." Elena did not feel like a hero. She felt like a sacrifice. "Your mother and I had an arranged marriage too," the king continued. "We did not love each other at first. But look at us now. We have built a good life together. We have you. We have respect and partnership." Elena looked at her mother. Queen Charlotte's eyes were shiny with tears, but she smiled and nodded. "Love can grow, Elena," her mother said softly. "Give it time. Give Alexander a chance." Elena wanted to tell them that she already gave her heart to someone else, that there was no room left for Alexander, but she just nodded again. After the meeting, Elena felt even more alone. She walked through the palace, not knowing where to go. Her feet carried her toward the West Tower, where the guards had their quarters. She should not go there. It was forbidden for her to be in that part of the palace, but she could not help herself. She needed to see Thomas one more time, even from far away. She hid behind a pillar and watched the guards changing shifts. And then she saw him. Thomas walked out with another guard. They were talking about something. Thomas looked tired. There were dark circles under his blue eyes. He looked as broken as Elena felt, as if he could feel her watching. Thomas suddenly looked in her direction. Their eyes met across the distance. Time stopped. In that moment, everything they could not say passed between them. All their love, all their pain, all their goodbye. Then Thomas looked away and kept walking. He had to. They both knew it. Elena's heart shattered all over again. She ran back to her room and locked the door. She threw herself on her bed and cried until no more tears would come. Margaret found her hours later, curled up like a child, holding the wooden bird. "Come, my dear," Margaret said gently. "We must prepare you for tomorrow." "I cannot do this, Margaret," Elena sobbed. "I cannot." "You can," Margaret said firmly but kindly. "You are stronger than you know. You are a princess. You will survive this. And one day, the pain will be less sharp. Not gone, but less." That night, Elena could not sleep. She stood by her window, looking at the stars. She wondered if Thomas was looking at the same stars. She wondered if he was thinking of her. Tomorrow, she would walk down the aisle in a beautiful white dress. Tomorrow, she would place her hand in Alexander's hand. Tomorrow, she would say vows that would bind her forever to a man she did not love. Tomorrow, she would say goodbye to her dreams. Tomorrow, her old life would end. Elena touched the cold glass of the window. "Goodbye, Thomas," she whispered to the night. "I will love you forever, even if I can never have you." The stars gave no answer. The night was silent and dark. Tomorrow was her wedding day, and Elena had never felt more alone in her entire life. She held the wooden bird close to her heart and closed her eyes, tried to remember every detail of Thomas's face. She wanted to keep him in her memory forever, because memories were all she would have left. The wedding day arrived with bright sunshine and clear blue skies. The whole kingdom was celebrating. Flags hung from every building. Flowers decorated every street. Music played in the town square. People danced and cheered. Inside the palace, Elena sat in front of her mirror while servants prepared her. They brushed her long hair until it shined like silk. They placed tiny white flowers in her hair. They helped her into the most beautiful wedding dress ever made. The dress was white as snow, with tiny pearls sewn into the fabric. It sparkled in the light. The train was so long that 3 servants had to carry it. Any other bride would feel like a princess in this dress. But Elena felt like she was wearing chains made of silk and pearls. "You look beautiful, Your Highness," said one of the young servants, her eyes full of admiration. Elena looked at herself in the mirror. She did look beautiful, but her eyes looked dead. There was no joy in them, no light. Margaret came in and sent the other servants away. She stood behind Elena and placed gentle hands on her shoulders. "It is time, my dear child," Margaret whispered. Elena's hands started shaking. "I cannot breathe, Margaret. This dress is too tight. The room is too small. I feel like I am dying." Margaret knelt down beside her and took her hands. "Look at me, Elena. Look at me." Elena met Margaret's eyes. "You can do this," Margaret said firmly. "You are the bravest person I know. You are doing this for your people, for peace. That takes more courage than any battle. But my heart—" "Your heart will heal," Margaret said, though her own eyes were wet with tears. "It will take time, but it will heal. I promise you." Elena was not sure she believed that, but she nodded anyway. A trumpet sounded outside. It was a signal. The ceremony would begin soon. Elena stood up. Margaret arranged her dress and veil one last time. Then she handed Elena a bouquet of white roses and lilies. "Remember," Margaret whispered, "you are not just a woman in love. You are a princess. You are strong. You will survive this day." Elena took a deep breath. Then another. Then she walked out of her room. The palace hallways were lined with guards in perfect uniforms. They all bowed as she passed. Elena kept her eyes forward, trying not to search for Thomas's face among them. But she could not help herself. Her eyes scanned each guard as she walked. And then she saw him. Thomas stood at the end of the hallway, near the entrance to the great hall. He was in his formal guard uniform, standing straight and tall. His face showed no emotion, as a guard should. But when Elena walked past him, their eyes met for just 1 second. In that second, Elena saw everything. She saw his love, his pain, his goodbye. A single tear rolled down Thomas's cheek. No one else saw it, but Elena did. Her heart broke into 1,000,000 pieces. Her steps faltered. She almost stopped walking, but Margaret, who walked behind her, whispered urgently, "Keep walking, my dear. Keep walking." So Elena did. She kept walking, even though every step took her further from the man she loved and closer to a future she did not want. The great hall was filled with hundreds of people, nobles from both kingdoms, foreign ambassadors, church officials. Everyone who mattered in the world was there. They all stood when Elena entered. They all stared at the beautiful princess in her magnificent dress. At the end of the long aisle, Prince Alexander waited. He wore a royal uniform of deep blue with gold buttons. He looked handsome and strong. Beside him stood the archbishop, holding a large book. Elena's father, King Edward, met her at the entrance. He offered his arm. "You look beautiful, my daughter," he said with pride. Elena took his arm. Her legs felt like water, but she forced him to move. They walked down the aisle together. Each step echoed in the huge hall. The walk seemed to take forever and no time at all. Finally, they reached the altar. King Edward placed Elena's hand in Alexander's hand. Then he stepped back. Alexander looked down at Elena. His face was serious, but his eyes were kind. He squeezed her hand gently, as if to say, "I understand. We will get through this together." The archbishop began speaking. His voice was loud and formal. He talked about duty, honor, and the sacred bond of marriage. He talked about the union of two kingdoms and the peace it would bring. Elena heard the words, but they sounded far away, like she was underwater. "Do you, Prince Alexander, take Princess Elena to be your wife?" the archbishop asked. "I do," Alexander said clearly and firmly. Then the archbishop turned to Elena. "Do you, Princess Elena, take Prince Alexander to be your husband?" This was it. This was the moment. Once she said those 2 words, her life would change forever. There would be no going back. Elena opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The hall became silent. Everyone waited. Alexander looked at her with worried eyes. King Edward frowned. Queen Charlotte brought her hand to her mouth. Elena's mind raced. She could say no. She could run. She could choose love over duty. She could. Then she remembered Thomas's words in the garden. "You could never run away and let your people suffer. It would destroy you." He was right. She knew he was right. Elena thought about all the soldiers who would die if the war continued, all the mothers who would lose their sons, all the children who would grow up without fathers, all the villages that would burn. Could she let all that happen just to follow her heart? No, she could not. Thomas knew her too well. This was who she was. This was her duty. Elena looked at Alexander. He gave her a small nod, as if to say, "I know how hard this is." Elena took a deep breath. She thought of Thomas one last time. She imagined his face, his smile, his blue eyes. She held that image in her heart, like a precious treasure she would keep forever. Then she spoke. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I do." The archbishop smiled. "Then by the power given to me, I pronounce you husband and wife." You may kiss the bride." Alexander lifted her veil slowly. His eyes asked permission. Elena gave a tiny nod. He kissed her gently on the lips. It was a soft, respectful kiss. Not a kiss of love, but a kiss of partnership. A kiss of two people making a promise to try. The hall erupted in cheers and applause. Trumpets played. Bells rang throughout the kingdom. Everyone was celebrating. The war was over. Peace had come. Two kingdoms were now united. But as Elena and Alexander turned to face the crowd, Elena's eyes searched for one person. She found Thomas standing against the far wall. He was clapping with the others, his face expressionless as a guard should be. But Elena saw the truth. She saw his pain. She saw his broken heart. And she saw him mouth two words that no one else could see. "Goodbye, Elena." Elena felt tears fill her eyes, but she blinked them back. She was a married woman now, a wife, a future queen. She could not cry for a love that was never meant to be. She smiled at the crowd. She held Alexander's arm. She played her part perfectly. But inside, a piece of her heart died that day. A piece that would belong to Thomas forever. The celebration began. Music played. People danced. Wine flowed like rivers. It was the happiest day in the kingdom's history. But for Elena, it was the saddest day of her life. She danced with Alexander. She smiled at the guests. She cut the wedding cake. She did everything a new bride should do. And through it all, she kept the wooden bird hidden in a secret pocket of her dress, close to her heart. Part 5, finale. 6 months passed since the wedding day. Princess Elena was now officially married to Prince Alexander. They lived together in the grand palace. They attended royal events together. They smiled for the people. From the outside, they looked like the perfect royal couple. But inside the palace walls, the truth was different. Elena and Alexander had separate bedrooms. They were polite to each other, even friendly, but there was no romance between them. They were like two good friends forced to live together. Alexander spent most of his time with the king, learning how to rule. He was kind to Elena, but distant. Sometimes, late at night, Elena would hear him writing letters. She knew he was writing to Isabella, the woman he truly loved. Elena spent her days doing princess duties. She visited hospitals and orphanages. She attended charity events. She smiled and waved to people. Everyone loved her. They called her the kind princess. But at night, when she was alone in her room, Elena would take out the small wooden bird Thomas had carved for her. She would hold it and remember his face, his voice, his touch. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she just sat in silence, feeling numb. She had not seen Thomas since the wedding day. She heard from Margaret that he was still working as a palace guard, but he had requested to work in a different section of the palace, far from where Elena lived. He was avoiding her. It was better that way. Seeing him would be too painful for both of them. Winter came to the kingdom. Snow covered the palace gardens. The fountains froze. Everything looked beautiful but cold, just like Elena's heart. One morning, Margaret came to Elena's room with worried eyes. "Your Highness," Margaret said quietly, "I have news. It is about Thomas." Elena's heart stopped. "What about him? Is he hurt?" Margaret shook her head. "No, he is not hurt, but he has requested to leave the palace. He wants to go back to his village." Elena felt the world spinning around her. "Leave? Why?" Margaret sat beside her and took her hand. "My dear child, you must understand. It is too painful for him to be here, to see you every day, knowing you belong to another man. He needs to leave to heal his heart." "No," Elena whispered. "He cannot leave. I need to know he is near, even if I cannot see him." "That is selfish, Elena," Margaret said gently but firmly. "You cannot have both. You cannot be married to Alexander and keep Thomas close. You must let him go. You must let him find peace." Elena knew Margaret was right, but it did not make it hurt any less. "When does he leave?" Elena asked, tears falling down her face. "Tomorrow morning," Margaret said, "before sunrise." That night, Elena could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, holding the wooden bird. Tomorrow, Thomas would leave forever. She would never see him again. At midnight, Elena made a decision. She had to see him one last time. She had to say goodbye properly. She wrapped a warm cloak around herself and quietly left her room. The palace was dark and silent. She walked through the hallways like a ghost, careful not to make noise. She went to the garden, the same garden where they had met, where they had fallen in love, where they had said their first goodbye. The garden was covered in snow. The fountain was frozen. Everything looked like a dream made of ice and moonlight. Elena sat on the stone bench and waited. She did not know if Thomas would come, but somehow she felt he would know. Love had a way of knowing. An hour passed. Elena was starting to feel the cold seeping through her cloak. Maybe he would not come. Maybe this was foolish. Then she heard footsteps in the snow. Thomas appeared from the shadows. He was not in his guard uniform. He wore simple traveling clothes. He looked older somehow, tired, but his blue eyes still shined in the moonlight. "Elena," he said softly, "I knew you would be here. You were coming to say goodbye." Elena said, "It was not a question." Thomas nodded. "I could not leave without seeing this place one more time, without remembering." They stood in silence for a moment. There was so much to say, but no words seemed enough. "I heard you are leaving tomorrow," Elena finally said. "Yes," Thomas replied. "I am going back to my village. My father is old now. He needs help with the farm. It is time for me to go home." "I do not want you to go," Elena whispered. Thomas walked closer to her. "And I do not want to leave you. But I must. We both know I must." "These 6 months have been torture," Elena said, her voice breaking. "Knowing you were in the palace, but not being able to see you, not being able to talk to you. It has been torture for me too," Thomas admitted. "Every day I wanted to run to you, but I knew I could not. You are married now. You have a duty, and I must respect that." Elena stood up and walked to him. She looked into his eyes. "I need you to know something. I need you to know that even though I am married to Alexander, my heart will always belong to you. Always." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "And my heart will always belong to you, my princess, until the day I die. Promise me something," Elena said, grabbing his hands. "Promise me that you will try to be happy, that you will find a good woman and marry her, that you will have children and a peaceful life. Promise me." Thomas shook his head. "I cannot promise that." "Please," Elena begged. "I need to know that you will be okay, that you will not spend your whole life alone, pining for something you cannot have." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I promise I will try, but I cannot promise my heart will ever belong to anyone else." "That is enough," Elena whispered. Thomas pulled her into his arms one last time. They held each other tightly in the snowy garden, under the stars. Elena memorized everything. The feel of his arms, the smell of him, the sound of his heartbeat. "I love you," Thomas whispered into her hair. "I will love you forever." "I love you too," Elena said, crying against his chest. "In every lifetime, in every world, I will love you." They stood there for a long time, not wanting to let go. But eventually they had to. Thomas pulled away gently. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small letter. "I wrote this for you. Do not read it now. Read it when I am gone." Elena took the letter with shaking hands. Thomas kissed her forehead one last time. "Be happy, Elena. Or at least try to find peace. You deserve that." "So do you," Elena said through her tears. Thomas smiled sadly. Then he turned and walked away into the darkness. His footsteps in the snow got quieter and quieter until Elena could not hear them anymore. She stood alone in the garden, holding his letter, watching the place where he had disappeared. He was gone, really, truly gone. Elena sat back down on the bench and opened the letter. Through her tears, she read his words. "My dearest Elena, by the time you read this, I will be gone from the palace. I will be far away, starting a new life. But no matter where I go or what I do, you will always be in my heart. Please do not feel guilty about me. You made the right choice. You chose duty over love, and that makes you a true princess. I am proud of you. I want you to know that loving you was the greatest honor of my life. Even though we cannot be together, I am grateful for every moment we shared. Those memories will keep me warm on cold nights. Try to find happiness with Alexander. He is a good man. Maybe not the man you love, but a man who will treat you with respect and kindness. That is worth something. And someday, when we are both old and our lives are behind us, perhaps we will meet again. Perhaps in another world, in another life, we will be free to love each other the way we were meant to. Until then, my princess, live well, be kind, be strong, and know that somewhere in this world, there is a simple man who loves you more than life itself. Forever yours, Thomas. Elena folded the letter carefully and held it close to her heart. She cried until she had no tears left. When the sun began to rise, she stood up. She was stiff from the cold, and her eyes were swollen from crying. She walked back to the palace slowly. As she entered her room, she saw Alexander standing in the hallway. He looked at her with knowing eyes. "You went to say goodbye to him," Alexander said quietly. Elena expected him to be angry, but instead, he looked sad and understanding. "Yes," Elena admitted. There was no point in lying. Alexander nodded. "Isabella sent me a letter yesterday. She is getting married to a merchant's son, a man her father chose for her." He paused. "We are both grieving today." Elena looked at him and saw her own pain reflected in his eyes. Two people married each other, but in love with other people. "I am sorry," Elena said. "Do not be sorry," Alexander replied. "This is our life now. We must learn to live with it." He offered her his arm. Elena took it. Together, they walked toward the throne room. They had duties to perform, people to meet, a kingdom to help rule. They would never have the love they dreamed of, but they had respect. They had kindness. They had partnership. And perhaps one day that would be enough. As Elena walked beside Alexander, she touched the pocket where she kept the wooden bird and Thomas's letter. She would keep them forever. Hidden treasures of a love that could not be, but would never die. Outside, the snow began to melt. Spring was coming, and life, as it always does, went on. The end.